30 years ago, critics laughed at Demolition Man, a cop movie wrapped in neon satire where Taco Bell rules the world and people get fined for swearing. Ridiculous, right? Except now we're living in it. The predictions, the warnings, the jokes that stopped being funny because they became real. But the real story isn't just what ended up on screen, it's what happened behind it. Actors who refused roles, stars fired after 2 days, a lawsuit that never made it to court, and a haircut that changed basketball forever. From Van Damme's rejection to Stallone's midnight golf obsession, this is the chaotic birth of a film that accidentally predicted our future. Ready to unfreeze the truth? Here are over 20 wild facts about Demolition Man that'll make you see this cult classic completely differently.
Teddy bear.
Number 1. Van Damme and Siegel both refused. Then Jackie Chan said no before Stallone ever suited up as John Spartan. Warner Brothers had a completely different vision. They wanted an all-out martial arts war. Jean-Claude Van Damme versus Steven Seagal, two of the biggest action stars of the early 90s, going head-to-head in a futuristic showdown. The studio pitched both of them. Neither would budge. Van Damme didn't want to play the villain. Seagal didn't want to play the villain. Both wanted to be the hero. The project stalled completely. Then Stallone stepped in, eager to anchor a futuristic cop story that mixed action with social commentary. But he had his own casting idea. He wanted Jackie Chan as Simon Phoenix. Chan was genuinely intrigued by the offer. Playing a villain in a big Hollywood production could have been a career pivot. But there was a problem. His fan base in China and across Asia absolutely despised seeing him as a bad guy. They loved Chan for his comedy, his heroism, his charm. Turning him into a psychotic criminal would have alienated millions of fans. Chan politely declined. That rejection opened the door for Wesley Snipes, who didn't just accept the role, he embraced Phoenix's anarchic madness completely. He bleached his hair platinum blonde, creating one of the most iconic villain looks of the decade, but Snipes hated that hairdo with a passion. The second filming wrapped, he shaved it all off. What began as a martial arts fantasy between two action titans ended up as a collision between Stallone's stoic intensity and Snipes' unhinged, gleeful chaos. Number 2. Lori Petty was fired after 2 days. Sandra Bullock saved the film. Before Sandra Bullock became Officer Lenina Huxley, someone else had the role. Lori Petty, fresh off Point Break and about to star in Tank Girl, was cast first. She lasted exactly 2 days on set before creative differences ended her run. According to producer Joel Silver, it was about the work. According to Petty herself, it was simpler than that. She and Sylvester Stallone were oil and water. Their personalities clashed immediately. There was no chemistry, no collaboration, just friction. So the production scrambled, desperate for someone who could balance Stallone's granite seriousness with warmth and comic timing. Sandra Bullock walked into that chaos and instantly reshaped the character. Suddenly, Huxley wasn't just a sidekick spouting exposition. She became the film's emotional center, a bridge between the brutal past and the sanitized future. The scene where Huxley brings Spartan home had to be filmed twice, once with Petty scrapped entirely, then again with Bullock, with the director cramming even more pop culture artifacts into the set to emphasize her obsession with the 20th century. Just months after Demolition Man wrapped, Bullock would headline Speed, the film that launched her into superstardom. Looking back, it's hard to imagine anyone else in the role. Demolition Man didn't just save a troubled production. It accidentally introduced one of Hollywood's biggest stars. Number 3. Stallone filmed Demolition Man and Cliffhanger at the same time. 1993 wasn't just busy for Sylvester Stallone, it was punishing. Demolition Man and Cliffhanger overlapped so much that Stallone was doing interviews about scaling icy peaks while still wearing John Spartan's futuristic uniform under his jacket. He'd wrap an action sequence chasing Wesley Snipes through the rubble of San Angeles, then dash off to promote himself dangling thousands of feet above the Alps. The schedule was brutal. Sleepless nights, back-to-back call sheets, constant travel, zero downtime. His body took a beating. His mind stayed sharp out of sheer necessity. But the gamble paid off massively. Within a single year, Stallone went from reinventing the action hero in a neon-drenched satire to clinging off cliffs in one of the decade's most intense thrillers. For a surreal moment in Hollywood history, he wasn't just the face of one blockbuster, he was the blockbuster, carrying two wildly different worlds on his shoulders simultaneously. Critics wondered if he'd burn out. Audiences just kept buying tickets. Stallone proved he could juggle chaos and still deliver. The grind nearly broke him, but it also cemented his place as one of the most durable action stars ever. Number 4. Wesley Snipes was too fast for the camera. Wesley Snipes brought years of martial arts training to Demolition Man. He's an accomplished black belt in real life, with explosive speed and precision that most actors can't touch. But when he unleashed that speed on set, the cameras couldn't handle it. His kicks and punches moved so fast they blurred into smears on film, leaving the fight coordinators frustrated and the editors with nothing usable to cut. The footage looked like a glitch, not a fight. Something had to change. The solution was almost comical. Snipes, one of the most skilled martial artists in Hollywood, had to deliberately slow himself down. He pulled his strikes to half speed, moving in what felt like slow motion to him, just so the audience could actually see what he was doing. Even at that reduced pace, his fluid motion gave Simon Phoenix a feral, unpredictable edge. He moved like a predator, always one step faster than the sanitized future cops trying to stop him. But here's the twist Dennis Leary revealed years later. Snipes insisted on doing all his own stunts, sometimes to the point of being difficult. So the crew developed a workaround. They'd wait for Snipes to leave for the day, then bring in his stunt double and quietly reshoot scenes at night. What might have been a technical nightmare ended up defining Phoenix's character. A villain so fast he seemed to outrun reality itself, even when he was deliberately holding back. Number 5. Spartan's daughter was completely cut from the film Demolition Man originally had a hidden emotional core, John Spartan's daughter. Early drafts and even filmed scenes revealed that she had survived the cryo years, grown up, and joined Edgar Friendly's underground resistance. At one point, Spartan was supposed to reunite with her during the wasteland sequences, creating a father-daughter arc that would have added serious weight to his character. She even appears briefly as an extra in one cut, a ghost of the storyline that almost was. Her name was Kate, and in the final wasteland battle, Spartan is seen protecting a scrap fighter by that name. At the end, she stands next to Edgar Friendly when Associate Bob introduces himself, but when test audiences watched the early cut, confusion set in. Many viewers thought Sandra Bullock's Huxley was secretly Spartan's daughter. The age difference, the awkward chemistry, it all added up in their minds. And when the scene came where Spartan and Huxley were about to have sex, audiences reacted negatively, strongly. The discomfort was immediate, so the studio made a call: cut the entire daughter subplot, slice it away completely. The editors removed every reference, every reunion, every emotional beat tied to Kate. The pacing improved. The action stayed tight, but something was lost. Fans later noticed the dangling threads, the protective instinct Spartan shows toward Kate in the wasteland, the strange dynamic between him and Huxley that never quite clicks romantically. These remnants sparked a persistent fan theory that Huxley was the secret daughter all along. It wasn't true, but the absence of answers gave the myth power. What could have been a heartfelt family reunion ended up as one of cinema's strangest what-ifs, a subplot erased by test screenings and the merciless blade of pacing. Number 6. The Hungarian author who claimed Hollywood stole his story. Buried beneath the explosions and satire is a shadow of legal trouble that never quite materialized. In 1986, Hungarian science fiction author István Németh published Holtak Harka, which translates to Fight of the Dead. The novel told the story of a terrorist and a counter-terrorism soldier who are cryogenically frozen, then awakened in the 22nd century to find that violence has been completely purged from society. Sound familiar? When Demolition Man hit theaters in 1993, Németh was stunned. The similarities were impossible to ignore. Criminals frozen in cryo, a sanitized future where violence is outlawed, chaos erupting when brutality returns. Németh went public. claiming that a committee had proven 75% of the movie was identical to his novel. He believed Hollywood had stolen his story, part of a larger pattern of Western studios plagiarizing Eastern European writers after the fall of the Iron Curtain. He even claimed to know the person allegedly responsible for illegally selling his idea to the filmmakers. But taking on Warner Brothers was no small feat. Namir admitted he couldn't afford the legal war. Without international copyright enforcement strong enough to protect him, the case fizzled before it ever reached a courtroom. No lawsuit was filed. No settlement was reached. Just accusations and whispers. Hungarian media ran with the story, and fans of the novel quietly insisted the blockbuster's premise wasn't entirely original. Today, Fight of the Dead is remembered mainly because of Demolition Man's success. A curious footnote where a little-known novel from behind the Iron Curtain briefly collided with Hollywood spectacle, leaving behind one of sci-fi cinema's strangest unresolved controversies. Whether Namir was right or it was pure coincidence, we'll probably never know for certain. Number 7. Joel Silver turned subtle satire into an action circus. At first, Demolition Man was shaping up to be something sharp and subtle, a darkly comic piece of social satire with more bite than explosions. The early drafts leaned heavily on irony, poking fun at political correctness, corporate overreach, and sanitized culture with a sly, intelligent wink. Writer Daniel Waters, who also penned Heathers and Batman Returns, crafted the original screenplay with that tone in mind. But once producer Joel Silver came aboard, subtlety didn't stand a chance. Silver, the mastermind behind Die Hard and Lethal Weapon, had a very specific philosophy. Audiences don't come for nuance, they come for spectacle. He tore through the script, demanding constant momentum, bigger explosions, louder shootouts, and one outrageous set piece after another. Under his watch, every scene was designed to top the one before it. The pacing became relentless, a roller coaster that never slowed down. The satire stayed, tucked into the dialogue and world-building, but it was wrapped in a Stallone-sized action circus that steamrolled over any quiet moments. For Silver, story always came second to energy. He wanted visceral thrills, not think pieces. Critics rolled their eyes at the excess, but fans embraced it completely. The very over-the-top nature that worried some writers became the film's defining stamp. Proof that in 90s Hollywood, Joel Silver didn't just produce movies, he detonated them. And Demolition Man, for better or worse, became exactly what he envisioned. A satire wrapped in so much firepower, you almost didn't notice the warnings hidden inside. Number 8. San Angeles was actually Irvine, California. On-screen, San Angeles looks like a gleaming vision of the future. Spotless glass towers, endless elevated freeways, and a cityscape scrubbed clean of history and grime. It feels like a metropolis built from scratch after the big one reshaped California. But it wasn't created with CGI or elaborate sets. It was Irvine, California. Producers originally dreamed of filming in San Diego and San Francisco, cities with recognizable landmarks and built-in visual appeal. But the budget crushed those plans immediately, so they turned to Orange County, where the bland corporate architecture of the 70s and 80s had accidentally created a strangely futuristic aesthetic. Stark glass office buildings, wide empty streets, zero trace of old-world character or charm. It was perfect for a story set in a future where personality had been legislated out of existence. The filmmakers barely had to dress anything. Irvine already looked like a sanitized utopia, a city designed by committees and focused on efficiency over soul. That blank, almost too perfect skyline gave San Angeles an uncanny quality. It feels real and unsettling at the same time, a future that's both sterile and uncomfortably plausible. Watching Demolition Man now, you're not looking at elaborate sets or miniatures. You're seeing the actual suburbs of Irvine, a city that looked like tomorrow decades before Hollywood showed up to film it. The joke is that Irvine hasn't changed much since. Drive through Orange County today, and you'll still see those same glass boxes, those same wide roads, that same eerie lack of character. Turns out the future was already here. We just didn't realize it until Stallone and Snipes started blowing it up. Number 9. The cars were real GM prototypes worth millions. The sleek, bubble-shaped vehicles gliding silently through San Angeles weren't cobbled together by the art department. They were real prototypes, loaned directly from General Motors. The crown jewel of the fleet was the GM Ultralight, a futuristic concept car so rare that only one fully functional version existed in the entire world. It was a marvel of engineering. Lightweight carbon fiber body, aerodynamic design, and a look so alien it seemed beamed in from another century. For Demolition Man, GM agreed to loan it out, but they also built additional non-driving shells just to populate the streets and make the future feel lived in. These weren't cheap rentals. They were the most expensive vehicles ever used in a Hollywood production at the time, guarded like museum pieces between takes and carefully maneuvered by specialized drivers. On screen, they became the perfect visual shorthand for a sanitized future where even car chases looked polished and controlled. Off-screen, they were a logistical nightmare, requiring constant supervision and kid glove handling. Long before Tesla became a household name or self-driving cars dominated tech conversations, these GM prototypes gave audiences a glimpse of a future that never quite arrived, at least not in the way the designers imagined. The Ultralight and its companion concept vehicles were supposed to represent the next generation of automotive design. Efficient, clean, revolutionary. Instead, they became relics of an optimistic vision that never made it past the prototype stage. But for one brief moment in Demolition Man, they were the future, and they looked absolutely perfect. Number 10. Two versions of the film, Taco Bell versus Pizza Hut. In the United States, Demolition Man famously declared Taco Bell the sole survivor of the franchise wars. Audiences laughed at the absurdity of tuxedo dinners served under neon bells, fine dining reduced to chalupas and crunch wraps. It was satire at its most ridiculous. But when the movie shipped overseas, international distributors hit a wall. Most viewers outside North America had never even heard of Taco Bell. The brand had zero recognition. The joke wouldn't land. The solution was bizarre but practical. Rewrite reality itself. In Europe, Asia, and parts of South America, every single reference to Taco Bell was swapped for Pizza Hut. Same parent company, different brand. That meant the production had to film two complete sets of inserts. One batch with Taco Bell logos, signage, and packaging. Another batch with Pizza Hut branding, seamlessly edited into the international cuts. Dialogue had to be dubbed or reworked. Set decorations swapped. It was a massive undertaking just to maintain product placement across different markets. Fans who later compared VHS tapes or imported DVDs discovered something strange. Two parallel timelines. One where Stallone dines on tacos in a satirical Mexican fast food palace. Another where he twirls pasta under Pizza Hut chandeliers. In a movie obsessed with fractured realities and alternate futures, this corporate edit accidentally created one of its weirdest quirks. Depending on where you watched Demolition Man, you saw a completely different version of the future. Same jokes, same scenes, different restaurant. It's the kind of detail that makes you wonder what other subtle changes slipped past audiences without anyone noticing. Number 11. The title song was written by Sting in 1981. The pounding, aggressive theme of Demolition Man didn't start in a Hollywood recording studio. It began a decade earlier in a smoky rehearsal space with the Police. In 1981, Sting wrote and recorded Demolition Man as a snarling reggae punk track for the band. It was raw, political, and packed with the anarchic energy that defined early 80s new wave. Later, Sting handed the song off to Grace Jones, who transformed it into a ferocious, swaggering anthem entirely her own. By the time Stallone was chasing Wesley Snipes through the rubble of San Angeles, the song was already a cult artifact. Rather than commission something entirely new, Warner Brothers went retro. They brought Sting back to re-record Demolition Man as a solo track specifically for the film's soundtrack. This time the arrangement was slower, heavier, pulsing with menace instead of punk energy. It gave the movie an extra layer of irony. A futuristic satire about control and chaos built on the foundation of a song born during the anarchic early 80s. What started as a political punk snarl became the unlikely anthem of a dystopian blockbuster. For fans familiar with both versions, the connection added depth. It wasn't just background music. It was proof that even old songs can find new lives, reshaped and repurposed by the future they once tried to warn us about. The past colliding with the future, wrapped in a 3-minute track that somehow fit both eras perfectly. Number 12. In Kuwait, the film was called Rambo the Destroyer. When Demolition Man hit theaters in Kuwait, audiences weren't lining up to see John Spartan. At least not under that name. Local distributors decided Stallone's Rambo brand carried far more weight in the region, so they made an audacious choice. They rebranded the entire film as Rambo the Destroyer. Imagine walking into a theater expecting jungle warfare and guerrilla combat, only to be dropped into cryo-prisons, Taco Bell empires, and the baffling mystery of 3 seashells. The cognitive dissonance must have been spectacular. The title switch was pure marketing opportunism, but it worked. Tickets sold fast on the strength of Rambo's legacy alone. Audiences showed up expecting one thing, and got something completely different. For Stallone, it created an accidental alternate timeline where his grizzled Vietnam vet had somehow leapt centuries into the future to battle a bleach-blonde psychopath. Fans still joke about wanting to see that crossover for real. Rambo with laser rifles and futuristic body armor, taking on Simon Phoenix in hand-to-hand combat. Instead, what Kuwait got was a bizarre case of mistaken identity. A satirical cop thriller dressed in the skin of an action franchise that had nothing to do with it. Whether audiences felt cheated or pleasantly surprised, nobody knows. But the story lives on as one of the strangest international marketing decisions ever made. Proof that in some corners of the world, Demolition Man was Rambo, and nobody questioned it. Number 13. Sandra Bullock's career was predicted in the background Demolition. Man didn't just launch Sandra Bullock's career. It seemed to predict it with eerie precision. In one scene, as cops debate whether to thaw John Spartan, a tiny scale model bus sits in the background among other props. Blink and you'll miss it. But 1 year later, Bullock was behind the wheel of a speeding bus in Speed, the role that catapulted her to superstardom. Coincidence? Maybe. But it gets weirder. In Demolition Man's sanitized future, every single restaurant is Taco Bell. The franchise wars left only one survivor, and fine dining now means chalupas served on silver platters. Fast forward years later, and Bullock won an Oscar for The Blind Side, playing Lee Ann Tuohy, the wife of a man who built his fortune running Taco Bell franchises. The connections are too strange to ignore. It's as if her entire career was hiding in plain sight, foreshadowed in the background details and world-building of a sci-fi satire. Viewers in 1993 thought they were watching a quirky sidekick cop navigating a bizarre future, but the movie was quietly hinting at the powerhouse Bullock was about to become. In hindsight, Demolition Man didn't just predict a dystopian tomorrow. It predicted Sandra Bullock's rise from supporting actress to Academy Award winner. The future was written in prop buses and fast food jokes. We just weren't paying attention. Number 14. Mattel made R-rated Toys for Kids Demolition. Man was rated R. Blood, brutal violence, casual profanity, and at least one decapitation. Exactly the kind of movie parents were supposed to keep away from kids. And yet, Mattel rolled out a full-action figure line as if it were the next Saturday morning cartoon. Spartan and Phoenix became plastic heroes, complete with spring-loaded weapons, detachable armor, and accessories designed for children. Parents were understandably baffled. What were toy companies thinking? The irony went even deeper. Many of the figures were recycled molds from Mattel's New Adventures of He-Man line. So kids unknowingly staged battles where Stallone's gritty future cop shared his muscles, proportions, and armor designs with a repurposed space-age He-Man toy. It was corporate efficiency at its most absurd. Why design new figures from scratch when you can slap a new paint job on existing inventory? For a film warning about overbearing corporations and runaway consumerism, the strangest twist was watching it sell itself straight to the toy aisle. The Demolition Man toy line tanked. Kids wanted heroes, not R-rated satire. But collectors today hunt those figures down as bizarre relics of an era when studios genuinely believed ultra-violent action films could be marketed to children. It's a snapshot of 90s excess where nothing was too mature to be turned into a Happy Meal toy or a plastic collectible. Demolition Man tried to warn us about corporate overreach. Then it became a perfect example of it. Number 15. DC Comics and a chaotic video game expanded the universe. The movie may have ended with Spartan thawed and Phoenix frozen for good, But the story didn't stop there. DC Comics jumped in with a 4-issue miniseries, diving deeper into the world of San Angeles, its crime-ridden underground wastelands, and side stories exploring Edgar Friendly's resistance. The tone was pulp sci-fi madness, balancing social satire with action serial thrills. It gave fans more context and backstory than the film ever could. Then came the video game, released for SNES and Sega Genesis, which seemed designed to confuse. Levels switched genres mid-mission without warning. You'd be playing a side-scrolling shooter. Then suddenly the game shifted to an overhead maze, leaving players whiplashed and disoriented. Controls changed, objectives scrambled, critics trashed it as a mess. But for kids in the 90s, it was still a chance to blast through Spartan's world with a controller in hand, bugs and all. Together, the comics and games transformed Demolition Man from a 2-hour theatrical experience into a small, chaotic, multimedia franchise. It lived on in panels and pixels long after the credits rolled, expanding the mythology in ways the film never attempted. For fans willing to dig deeper, there was an entire universe waiting beneath the surface. You just had to be willing to tolerate some truly bizarre gameplay to find it. Number 16. The Three Seashells. Mystery that never got solved for 3 decades, fans have obsessed over Demolition Man's strangest running gag. The 3 seashells in the bathroom. Nobody in the film explains how they work. Spartan is baffled. Officer Irwin laughs at him. The audience is left completely in the dark. Screenwriter Daniel Waters later revealed the idea came from a friend who kept seashells in his own bathroom purely as decoration. Waters thought it looked oddly futuristic, so he tossed it into the script as a throwaway joke. He never expected it to become the film's most infamous mystery. Since then, theories have spiraled out of control. Some fans claim 2 shells are for scraping, 1 for polishing. Others insist they work like chopsticks, delicately maneuvering things best left unspoken. Stallone himself once suggested a chopstick-style method in an interview, telling people to use their imagination from there. But nobody has ever given a definitive answer. The mystery became a cultural phenomenon, a running punchline in interviews, fan forums, convention panels, and even cosplay displays. What began as random set dressing grew into one of sci-fi cinema's most enduring riddles. It's been referenced in other films, parodied in TV shows, and debated endlessly online. Proof that sometimes the silliest, most insignificant details outlive the explosions and spectacle. The 3 seashells weren't meant to be important, but they became the one thing everyone remembers. A joke that refuses to die, because nobody can agree on the punchline. Number 17. Stallone was obsessed with golf during filming. Sylvester Stallone may have been battling Simon Phoenix by day, but by night he was chasing a very different kind of victory. During filming, Stallone developed an all-consuming obsession with golf, so intense that he had a private driving range built near the set and brought in a professional instructor to fine-tune his swing between takes. Dennis Leary recalled being jolted awake by Stallone pounding on his trailer door at midnight, golf clubs in hand, demanding he come outside and play. Sandra Bullock confirmed the story in interviews, laughing that instead of rehearsing lines or discussing scenes, Stallone preferred whacking balls into the darkness under portable floodlights. The crew joked that he was secretly training for the PGA Tour instead of preparing for his next action sequence. While John Spartan fought a cryogenic criminal on-screen, Stallone was locked in a personal war with fairways and greens off-screen. It became such a fixture of the production that people stopped questioning it. Stallone would wrap an intense fight scene, covered in fake blood and bruises, then immediately head to his makeshift driving range to decompress. Golf became his escape, his meditation, his way of shutting off the chaos of a big-budget action film. For a guy known for playing intense, driven characters, his real-life intensity was aimed at a completely different target. And apparently he wasn't taking no for an answer. Not from Dennis Leary, not from anyone. Number 18. Stallone hated the cryo scene, but loved being naked. While Stallone loved his golf, he absolutely hated one particular scene. The cryogenic freezing sequence, where Spartan is submerged and frozen solid, was supposed to look dramatic and futuristic. Behind the scenes, it was a nightmare. Stallone later described it as probably the worst 5 hours he'd ever experienced on a movie set. He was terrified. Submerged in cold liquid, surrounded by effects teams and cameras, unable to move freely. The claustrophobia, the discomfort, the sheer vulnerability of it all. It pushed him to his limits. Ironically, the one scene where Stallone was completely comfortable was the one where he appeared completely naked. When Spartan thaws out in the future, he's shown nude, vulnerable, disoriented. Director Marco Brambilla later said Stallone had no issues with it whatsoever. In fact, he'd done all his push-ups and pump-ups beforehand, making sure he looked his absolute best. The freezing terrified him. The nudity? No problem. Just another day at the office for a guy who'd spent decades sculpting his physique for the camera. It's a reminder that even action stars have limits. Stallone would leap off buildings, throw punches for hours, and endure brutal stunts without complaint. But strap him into a cryo tank, and suddenly he's counting the minutes until it's over. Everyone has their breaking point. For Stallone, it was cold water and claustrophobia, not cameras or crowds. Number 19. The film predicted our future with terrifying accuracy. When Demolition Man hit theaters in 1993, its vision of a squeaky clean future seemed like absurd parody. A society where people were fined for swearing, where physical contact was taboo, where fast food chains won corporate wars and only one restaurant survived, where cops were too timid and undertrained to handle real criminals. It played as broad satire, a cartoon dystopia wrapped in explosions and one-liners. Critics saw it as lightweight social commentary. Audiences laughed at the exaggerated jokes. But as the decades rolled on, something strange happened. People started noticing how much of it felt eerily familiar. Cities adopting strict speech codes. Corporations consolidating until only a handful of giants dominated entire industries. Debates over whether police forces were trained more for bureaucracy than actual danger. Social norms shifting toward sanitized, non-contact interactions. The jokes stopped feeling distant. By the time COVID hit in 2020, with handshake bans and toilet paper shortages, Demolition Man was being cited as accidentally prophetic. Suddenly, verbal morality statutes didn't seem like parody. They sounded like cancel culture and speech policing taken to their logical extreme. Corporate monopolies weren't satire, they were reality. Politicians as celebrities? Check. A society so obsessed with safety and cleanliness that it forgot how to handle chaos? Check. What critics once dismissed as goofy futurism now reads like a warning we ignored. The movie promised parody. Time delivered prophecy. And the world kept inching closer to San Angeles whether we wanted it or not. Number 20. The Schwarzenegger Presidential Library joke became real. One of Demolition Man's funniest throwaway gags happens during a car chase. Sandra Bullock's character casually mentions she's been reading old newsreels at the Schwarzenegger Presidential Library. Spartan does a double-take, the Schwarzenegger Library. Yes, Huxley explains, Arnold Schwarzenegger was so popular that the Constitution was amended to allow foreign-born citizens to run for president, and he won. In 1993, it was pure satire. The idea of the Terminator running the country was a punchline about celebrity worship gone too far. Audiences laughed at the absurdity. But less than a decade later, that joke suddenly looked prophetic. In 2003, Arnold Schwarzenegger stunned the world by becoming the governor of California. The bodybuilder turned action star had crossed over into legitimate political power. And while he couldn't technically run for president due to being Austrian-born, people actually started discussing whether the Constitution should be changed. Senator Orrin Hatch of Utah even introduced the Equal Opportunity to Govern Amendment, nicknamed the Arnold Amendment, which would have allowed naturalized citizens who'd been Americans for 20 years to run for president. It never passed. But the fact that it was seriously proposed made the Demolition Man joke feel uncomfortably prescient. What started as a tongue-in-cheek gag about Hollywood action stars ended up aging into one of the most uncanny predictions in sci-fi history. Fiction didn't just flirt with reality, it practically wrote the blueprint. Number 21. Critics hated it, audiences loved it. Time proved it right. When Demolition Man opened in October 1993, critics didn't see satire, they saw noise. Reviews called it cartoonish, overblown, even idiotic, just another Stallone shoot-'em-up with explosions drowning out any semblance of thought. Roger Ebert gave it 1 star complaining that it hurtled across the universe only to end in a generic gunfight. Gene Siskel gave it a thumbs down for its violence. To the critical establishment, Demolition Man was disposable popcorn entertainment at best, but audiences caught something critics completely missed. Beneath the gunfire and cryo-prisons was a razor-edged satire about censorship, corporate monopolies, and a society so sanitized it had forgotten how to function. The film opened at number 1, eventually grossing nearly $160 million worldwide. VHS gave it a second life. Traded in dorm rooms, rewatched on cable, quoted endlessly for its seashells and Taco Bell jokes. It became a cult phenomenon. Over time, the world it mocked started to look eerily familiar. Verbal morality statutes felt less like comedy and more like prophecy in the age of speech codes and online cancellations. Fast food monopolies, privatized policing, politicians worshipped as celebrities. Suddenly, Demolition Man wasn't dumb at all. The movie critics once dismissed grew sharper with each passing year, transforming into one of the most unsettlingly accurate sci-fi cult classics of the 90s. What seemed like exaggeration in '93 feels uncomfortably plausible today, and that's the most terrifying joke of all. Bonus fact: Dennis Rodman copied Simon Phoenix's hair and changed basketball forever. Wesley Snipes hated his platinum blonde hair so much he shaved it off the instant filming wrapped. But in the real world, that wild look sparked a cultural shockwave nobody saw coming. NBA bad boy Dennis Rodman saw Snipes' anarchic blonde villain and was inspired. He copied the look for his debut with the San Antonio Spurs, launching a streak of ever-changing neon hairstyles that became his trademark. Suddenly, Simon Phoenix's over-the-top aesthetic leapt from a sci-fi dystopia straight onto the basketball court, where Rodman turned it into a global style statement. The influence didn't stop there. Rodman's willingness to experiment with color, to embrace chaos and spectacle, changed how athletes approached self-expression. Before Rodman, most players stuck to conventional looks. After him, the floodgates opened. Hair became a canvas. Personality became brand. And it all traced back to a villain Snipes couldn't wait to forget. In the end, Phoenix didn't just terrorize San Angeles. He rewired the playbook for rebellion in sports and pop culture. A haircut meant to symbolize villainy became a symbol of freedom. And Snipes, who despised every second of it, accidentally created one of the 90s most iconic looks. Demolition Man began as a wild collision between Stallone's granite intensity and Snipes' unhinged chaos, stuffed with explosions, satire, and a future too absurd to take seriously. Seashell toilets, Taco Bell empires, fines for swearing. It was all played for laughs. Critics rolled their eyes. Audiences ate it up. But 3 decades later, the jokes sting with eerie accuracy. We live in a world of sanitized language, corporate monopolies, and political celebrities who look like they walked straight out of a parody script. What seemed like over-the-top satire in '93 now feels like a warning we ignored. The future didn't arrive gradually. It rushed at us faster than anyone expected. Cities fine behavior. Corporations swallow competitors. Handshakes became suspect. And somewhere in the rubble of all that change, Demolition Man sits quietly saying, "I told you so." It's not just a cult classic. It's a time capsule, a prophecy wrapped in neon and violence, aging into relevance with every passing year. If this future still feels a little too close to ours, drop a comment below. Tell us which fact shocked you most, or which cult classic we should unfreeze next. Because Demolition Man endures not just as '90s action spectacle, but as proof that sometimes the craziest satires end up being the most accurate predictions. The future came faster than anyone thought, and maybe the real demolition wasn't of cities or buildings. It was of common sense itself. Be well. And whatever you do, figure out those 3 seashells before it's too late.